Hey guys, it's Sandeep from RevAtlas and welcome to yet another video, and today we are going to be reviewing the cameras on the Redmi Note 9. Now before we get this video started, please do make sure to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications for more videos like this. Now let's begin the video. So the Redmi Note 9 is the latest addition to the Note series from Redmi, and this features a quad camera setup like the Note 9 Pro and Pro Max. But even with the Note 9 having the same 48 megapixel primary camera resolution as the Note 9 Pro, there is a difference between the two sensors. The GM1 is what is being used on the Note 9, while the Note 9 Pro actually gets the newer model, which is the GM2, both of which are sensors from Samsung's ISOCELL division. Apart from this, you also get a 2 megapixel macro sensor compared to the 5 megapixel one on the Redmi Note 9 Pro. But this still has autofocus and has the same 2 cm minimum focusing distance as well that you get on the Note 9 Pro. Apart from this, the 2 megapixel depth sensor as well as the 8 megapixel ultra wide angle f2.2 camera remains the same. Now, in terms of dynamic range, this is actually pretty good, especially in terms of the highlights, which it manages to keep quite in check, but there is a tendency to actually underexpose the shadows, which can also be overcome by either fixing it in post-production, but the easier option for most, especially those who don't know how to post-process, would be to just use the night mode, which improves the images by a huge margin. The night mode also has less noise compared to the regular HDR mode, which actually is a blessing in disguise considering that the regular mode does have higher noise levels than I would have expected, which is also a result of the over sharpening that's been done, and that also leads to loss of detail and a watercolor sort of effect, especially when it comes to foliage. The overall white balance is great and the colors are also quite natural, but you can of course make use of the AI mode as well as the Pro Color mode in order to make more punchier images, or you can do so yourself by tweaking the images in post-production. The images are captured by default in 12 megapixels of resolution, but you can also opt for the 48 megapixel mode, which actually gives you higher file sizes that are roughly 3 times that of the regular 12 megapixel mode. Not that you get much of an improvement though in terms of detail or sharpness, since they are about the same and maybe a tad bit better in some rare cases, but you almost always get higher levels of noise. Now, one of the things that we found about the Note 9 is that if you are actually an avid photographer and know how to use RAW mode, then make use of that by going into the Pro mode and capturing RAW photos and then post-processing, since the results are much better than what you get with the stock camera itself. When it comes to low light performance, the images have high levels of noise, and while night mode improves things by a large margin, especially in terms of noise and also keeping the highlights in check, the issue here is that the images look quite a bit flatter, lack contrast as a result, and also have faded or washed out colors. Now, I get the fact that the GM1 sensor was quite capable when it came out, but I think the issue here was mainly the fact that there are several other newer sensors that put out better performance, and hence the GM1 looks dated, especially when it comes to the low light mode. The ultra wide angle camera has a much more dramatic field of view compared to the regular camera, and that can be used to your advantage when framing photos, but the issue here is that the images are quite a bit softer compared to the primary camera. They also have a slightly different white balance output and color output compared to the primary camera, and it looks overall a bit muted compared to the primary camera. The ultra wide angle camera is practically unusable in low light situations as the performance is quite poor, and there is no night mode either to make things a little bit better, if at least that. Now, moving on to a macro sensor, which is a 2 megapixel unit, and the quality is obviously not as good as the Redmi Note 9 Pro, but it's still decent for a macro camera, and it does well in terms of the autofocus speeds and also is able to focus up much closer than rivals such as Realme, and it can also do video. Then again, the quality is not all that great, and you will also see a watercolor effect, but at least you can get closer to a subject than most other phones in this particular price segment. Coming to a portrait mode, the images have excellent edge detection, great bokeh, as well as good sharpness on the portion in focus, and the blur is also a linear blur rather than just a selective one that just chooses the subject or object and blurs out the rest of the background. This actually looks more natural, and overall is a very good output, especially in this price segment. The front-facing camera is a 13 megapixel f2.2 sensor that's housed within a camera cutout at the upper left corner of the display. The images produced by the front-facing camera have good dynamic range, color, sharpness as well as detail, but when it comes to the portrait mode, we notice that the edge detection is not all that great and in some scenarios can go totally wrong. Coming to video mode, you can record videos with both the primary as well as the ultra wide angle camera at a maximum of 1080p 30fps, and both of these modes also have electronic image stabilization, and the stabilization is actually quite excellent. But what's good here is that the color palette is actually quite good and natural looking. While the focus hunting issue that was there in a few Redmi phones have been mitigated to a large extent, there is an exposure as well as color shifting issue that's evident in these video samples as well, and I hope that Xiaomi irons this out with a software update. The front-facing camera captures 1080p 30fps video as well, but the overall output is not that pleasing considering that there's no EIS, as well as having an output that is considered too soft. This is the front-facing camera on the Redmi Note 9 capturing 1080p 30fps video. Let me know what you guys think about the overall sharpness, dynamic range, how well it's picking my voice in this scenario, and the stabilization as well. The Redmi Note 9 does put on a decent performance, and in some areas it actually does very well considering that it has great dynamic range and excellent portrait mode, as well as gives very sharp and detailed selfies. But if you were a photography enthusiast or buying a phone specifically for the cameras, I would suggest spending a bit more and getting the Note 9 Pro, or if your budget permits going all out and getting the Poco X2 or the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max, all of these phones which give much better performance. That's it for this video guys. If you have any questions, do let us know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next one, and please don't forget to hit the subscribe button.